I'll hit record. Do you mind running through that again really quick too, though? Your background and how you grew up.
Yeah. So
Okay.
I'll start with the bigger thing
Okay.
real quick. My I'm a mixed race background. So my father's Chinese and my mother's Caucasian. Um, so oddly enough, my Chinese side of the family is all really, really either atheist or Baptist. There's
That's
no in
funny.
between. So they're really either science minded or they're very spiritual. So, and then my mom was Baptist, and then when we were born, she brought us into the Episcopalian church, and then she took us into the Catholic church. So I never did communion or anything. It was kind of like I got in on the side, you know. So
Yeah.
I didn't grow up like my best friend who went to Catholic school and, had some of that Catholic baggage, I guess is a good way to call it, because it is. Um, but I think because it was so wishy-washy with that, and um, it was just kind of left to be a spiritual journey that you wrestled with on your own.
Yeah.
I didn't talk about on the other podcast. Part of that for us, or for me, that was so significant is the fact that my mom had a son from her first marriage, and he had cystic fibrosis, and so he was 11 years older than me. So I knew I had a terminally ill brother, and unfortunately, some people's coping skills in the family weren't good for that. But the long and short of it was, like, I had some very intimate moments I probably shouldn't have as a 12-year-old, dealing with my older brother wrestling with his own fear of death and coming to terms with what he had to kind of find his way to his own belief. And I really don't know kind of what it was. But that left I remember being a very young child having that really, like, I would wake up in the middle of the night and go down to try and find my mom and be like, I am terrified of dying, because I knew it was something that was going to happen to my brother sooner or later. Right.
Yeah.
And so that was something I think I wrestled with a lot as a kid. And then when he was 12, or when I was 12, he passed away. And I woke up in the house, and I knew something was going on, and my mom and my dad weren't there. The neighbor was downstairs, and it was one of those things. And multiple people who knew my brother, who was a wonderful soul. He was just one of those, everybody who met him knew he was a light. But people had dreams, he came to them and said goodbye. And so those were all things that said to me that there was something there, right?
Yeah.
And my mother had an experience where my younger brother, who was also physically disabled, so I was that middle kid with brothers on either side that were disabled. And she was asleep on the floor or something, right? And said, "Oh, Devin is going to be okay. You can go to bed," right? And she knew it was Alan. And the nurses would talk about how the room would smell like him because he always stayed in the same room, And so there were all these tales right after my brother passed that instilled me with this, like, hope that there was something out there, but I didn't know.
Yeah.
And then there was a lot of anxiety and strife. I'm no contact with my mother at this point. But that in itself, in the last couple of years, was part of this spiritual journey, because overcoming certain traumas and dealing with a narcissistic parent unfortunately, I had to find my boundaries. And in doing so, I found my inner strength again in a spiritual sense,
Mhm.
because that was part of what helped stay strong enough to make hard decisions, ultimately, because I needed to protect my son. So, you
Mm.
know,
Yeah.
through meditating and through kind of going through this kind of dark night of the soul, um, you know, one of the first things that happened is I was out under the full moon, and I just started talking to what was out there, and then I heard these deer suddenly walking behind the fence. Is what I'm going to say is deer. Something was walking behind the fence, right?
Or
It's a
like
deer,
fairies.
right?
Yeah.
And then
It's a
I
ghost.
swear, the clouds and the moon, the full moon, just it turned into this face, this woman's face, and I felt like I was being supported by a mother in a way that I hadn't been.
Wow.
So that was very, very deep for me.
Yeah.
Very, very, like, just to the core. And so I started listening to as many podcasts as I could, which is how I had found man. And then she was talking about things that, you know, um, I had kind of been experiencing, but had no way of talking to anybody else or knowing that anybody else was going through. Um, and so since I had kind of focused myself so much on this hobby, and then I turned it into a career, as I was getting into some of the spiritual stuff, I started to see these connections with, um, you know, intention work, because I'd seen it in people in my knitting community doing the prayer shawls and things like that. But then once I was opening my vision to now kind of what people are working towards with more intention based work, and kind of stepping away from these really set rules, which I don't fit into rules well. If I can't kind of, it's like with photography. I understood what the f-stop and the different things were, but I did my photography intuitively.
Yeah.
I didn't focus on the details, and that's what I'm finding now in the community that didn't exist maybe when I wanted it to 20 years ago. Um, but then thinking, I dye yarn. I have I work with colors, um, and there's meaning in colors, and the meaning in colors is unique to each of us, which then again, uh, instills its own set of intentions. And then if you're mindful through the act of creating and spinning, wool into a yarn that you then knit or weave into something that you then wear or use as an altar cloth or anything. So recently I knit a scrunchie out of yarn that I dyed and hand spun. But I did it for the intention of the year, just like I want this to be this mind, like every time I see it on my wrist or put it in my hair, I'm going to be reminded of the intentions that I held while I made this.
Yeah.
And hopefully it's a talisman for the year, right? To
Yeah.
whatever that
Like
brings.
the you can even compare that to the tassels on the Hebrews garments when they made like reminders. Yeah. It,
Exactly.
do you do you,
Exactly. Yeah.
do you mind sharing those? Is that personal, like the intentions that you wove into that, or is that something you could share?
No, this year I really want to focus on. I have a small community that I kind of have, and I want them to. I'm looking for them to grow and expand, because community for me is kind of part of this network of um, support that's important, right? Especially when you don't have as much family. You kind of got to make family where you can. Um, but the caveat is that sometimes when you're the leader of a community, they will drain you, or, and not intentionally, but I have to remember to be good with my boundaries so that I can be supportive for them. But I also would like some prosperity to come back my way too, right? Like, to grow the prosperity of my community through positive means, you know. So I've entered into a little fiber art community. We're out here in Maryland. I'm kind of in rural Maryland. And so there's a couple of us that are fiber artists, but several of them have farms with animals and stuff like that. So COVID has changed how we interact as a community. And so we every month, the 3 or 4 or 5 of us, depending on who's in for the month, are just kind of supporting each other, going, hey, look at me, and then look at Lisa, and go look at, and Karen and everybody else, and check out the wonderful stuff we're doing for each other. And they're a little older, so I make them reels for TikTok and stuff. And
That's
so we're trading our skills within this little fiber community that we have, but we also want to make it feel small but welcoming, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That makes sense.
that was my intention for the year. It's like I want some of that good energy going in towards just seeing what gets created over the year.
Yeah. Yeah. When I was listening to your podcast on, um, is her name Mana? Is that how you say it?
Yeah,
I
man.
just found it literally, like, her channel, I think like 2 days ago or something. So, but
There's a lot there. You'll have fun.
yeah, yeah. But it was, I mean, you going through the process of the yarn, and what you do is just fascinating listening to that. And I remember you saying, I even have my phone here. I remember you saying, like, the way it, even feeling it go through your hand, and each color has a different, like, feeling and essence and stuff like that. Could you say more about that, or
Yeah.
the
So
process?
I'll talk a little bit about the how spinning works really quick,
Yeah.
right? So people understand. So essentially, you're taking straight fibers. I like to think about them as a plane, and the fiber move kind of along each other. Think of like plates, like plate tectonics or sheets of paper. So what we're doing is, by adding twist to it, that adds strength to it.
Hmm.
And so you are physically treadling or spinning a spindle. You're putting energy into that wool to make it into a strand of yarn. And then, so just like the act of kind of knitting, where people pray and knit, I'm thinking, okay, if I dye the yarn a specific color, let's say we'll talk about red, just because for Chinese people red is good luck, right? Good luck, prosperity. So if I dye this red yarn with those intentions behind it, and then while I'm spinning it, let's say I want the prosperity to be for, my family, I spin with those intentions. The red reminds me to keep my intention, right? The color kind of becomes like a flag. So your mind can wander, but then you look back down and you bring yourself back to it because of the color that's passing through your hands. And then when you're spinning, you can give it too much energy, and you can feel that the yarn gets tighter and tighter and tighter. So if you touch even just your shirt, you'll feel like there's a relaxed quality to the fibers. But if they had too much energy, they'll feel hard and rigid. Um, like you could cut through skin if they were pulled across too fast. Like they're really, really, it's tight and twisted, and it'll start to coil and pigtail. Um, but there's a little bit of knowing, if you know you're going to apply, give two intentions to my yarn, and I want to spin two single strands. I want to give it a little too much energy, because when I come back later to ply them, they'll wrap, release that, and balance. The two things will balance out, right? So you can
Oh,
kind of think about it in that way. You can have dual intentions, and then let's say you weave with multiple colors if you're a weaver. Then you have this cloth, right, that you've made. Or think about like the purple cloths that the priests wear.
mhm.
All of those things, if I feel like it's more magical if you can have intention from the very beginning
Yeah.
instead of just at the end. So even for me, what I'll do is, for personal things, I've collected spring water from the local mountain, and then I set them out, and I have some new moon water and full moon water. But those are things that I have for the year. So like for Chinese Lunar New Year, I went and collected water.
What could you?
Um,
I'm sorry. I'm very like I'm still learning
I
all
don't
this stuff. What's a new moon water and full moon water? Because I did hear you guys mention that. I was very curious about
Okay.
that.
Yeah, which water? So moon water. So basically the idea is that different phases of the moon have different energies.
Okay.
So if I set water out under that moon,
Yeah.
it'll get a specific energy to it. So then when I am in the process of my fiber arts, right,
Hmm.
I have to do things like when I'm done spinning yarn, I have to set it in water. Setting it in water sets the twist to the yarn, which
Yeah.
is almost like setting the intention in the yarn.
Okay.
And so if I'm going to make it from start to finish magically, if my water is even imbued with energy,
Yeah.
um I'm just
Yeah.
adding it.
That's fascinating. The river water, like the living water, it's flowing. It has this. Yeah. It has a quality and a spirit to it and a life to it. And then the moon.
Yeah,
I had a lot last year. I had a lot of weird synchronicities with the moon. I don't know how else to describe them. It was kind of strange. So I know kind of what you're talking about. There are uh, feelings. And I've heard, I haven't done like a whole lot of research, but I've heard that the full moon is kind of the most creative, or that's when people are most creative. I don't know if that's true. Um,
well, you got to think our bodies are made up of water,
mhm.
right? And the moon is responsible for the tides. So you got to think that there is some sort of tug and pull on us in some way, shape, or form,
Yeah,
just naturally being a part of this planet, this place that we are right now.
yeah,
um so and all I'm doing is just kind of exploring um
yeah.
what comes with all of that, you know and
And you're
and we'll
adding.
see.
I like how you said you're adding layers, and your layers of intention and layers of energy onto the like every little piece of yarn that you do. That's fascinating that
Right.
that much goes into it. It's
Well, and the thing is a lot of people will talk about um they'll talk about the weaving aspect of it.
mhm,
And the spinning snob in me keeps going, yeah, but you can't weave anything unless you spin it first, right? And so, and if we go back all the way, you've got these great spider goddesses, right? Spinning the yarns of fate. And then you had the Norns spinning, the yarn, and they are they're kind of the fates. And then you've got in the Greek mythology, you've got the fates, and they're each of them are attached to this spindle and this thread, and the idea of that this yarn that goes through time, And then if you want to be scientific about it, you've got string theory and things like that.
I didn't even think about
And
that.
I like science too. So I sit and those things just start to, there get to be too many little things that kind of go, hey,
Yeah.
there's a
Oh,
little bit of that echoing over here and over here and over here. So let me
mhm.
get all those threads and pull them together and see what this piece of fabric looks like when I'm done with it,
Yeah.
and then I guess I'll die. So
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of parallels you see between different things, between science and I don't even know the right words to say, like mystical things. That I don't even in religious things you see a lot of parallels.
yeah.
And
Well, I think at the end of the day, it's all energy. Science has said that energy can't be destroyed, it just changes. And our little brains will figure out more and more. To think that we can understand everything is just so, uh, what, conceited, you know,
yeah,
small-minded of us
yeah.
to assume that we can understand things on such a huge scale. So, there's nothing wrong with looking and trying to understand. It makes more sense to me internally to work that way, um, and just follow intuition.
Mhm.
Because if everybody says trust your gut, right? And if something feels wrong, don't listen to it, because something inherently in you is saying, "Ugh, I don't like it.
Yeah,
I don't like it," you
yeah.
know? So,
Mhm. So that's kind of where you're at, as well as you're saying exploring all the different, because yeah, I think you said on the podcast that if I remember right, you said you just within the past few years you kind of discovered the mystical aspect of the energy aspect and all the parallels that are going into your practice and everything, and
yeah, I think
exploring that
I
more.
think it was I think I've been able to pay attention to them where,
Hmm.
I've had the time to do it. The pandemic helped too, it just forced us all to turn inward.
Hmm.
Um, but a big part of it, like I said, was working through this kind of trauma stuff I've been through in my youth, and recognizing that certain things were happening back then. So things like knocking on the walls, or I'd find a candle lit when the candle was out, or
Whoa, say more about
um,
this.
I
I
used
did.
to.
I do remember you saying that something about you have encounters with the Fae folk now, and I will say I do believe in fairies. I have a very hard time explaining that to people, but I'm like, no, they're real. The jinn are real. Like it's
Yeah.
real. But yeah. Anyway, so who's
Well,
lighting
so
candles in your house and knocking on the wall?
so I used to have this roommate. Back in my day. It was a hardcore, goth scene kind of girl. But my roommate was just a little crazy, and um I remember they went out to the club. That's just really, it's too loud. I don't really like large groups of people, so I stayed home. And I remember being in the bathtub, and the first time I got, it was three knocks on the wall. I was in the house by myself. Um and it was weird because it came through the tub, like because I had my head slightly under the water, so you know how it
It's the moon
amplifies.
water.
Yeah, well, no, it's just
Yeah.
bathtub water at
Yeah, I'm
that
just
point,
kidding.
but still, it's like that boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
Of course, I sat up, and the house was silent. And he ended up bringing home some random people from Canada, and they ended up not being bad, but it just felt like
Those
a
Canadians.
little warning kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And um, another time we had gone out and we had come home, and I had an altar like space, but I really wasn't focused or really doing much with it. It was just, okay, here's my incense and my candles. But I remember coming home and freaking out because I hadn't been burning the candles for a little while. So it's not like I blew them out and maybe it reignited when I was out of the house. it was we'd been out of the house for like 6 hours. We come home, and this candle had clearly been burning for like 3 hours because there was enough liquid going.
Yeah.
And it was definitely like, what is going on?
Yeah.
So little things would happen like that would remind me, I guess, to stay inquisitive, maybe. um
Do you think
but then
that's
I had
that?
this.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. What was
Oh
your
no,
question?
I was just gonna say, do you think that's what those were mostly for? Were to just reminders to about the
To
spirit
me, they
realm or
were
something?
either, I have I have this feeling that when I'm visited by, let's say, my brother or something, it happens in the dream space, and it doesn't necessarily happen like, I don't feel like my dead brother's following me around or anything like that, right? So I at that point had a dream where a male energy had come up behind me and it was radiating pure love, right? And so at that time, leaning more Christian, I was like, oh, I must have encountered, you know, God or the Holy Spirit or something like that. Um, but I'd always had these feelings of kind of like there's either a male that I don't know, like I've always had this feeling like I have another half that's not here. And so later on, I remembered finding this meadow by myself when I was a little girl, but I could never find my way back to it. And um, and I tried. I would try to find this place. And so now when I meditate, actually, it's one of the first places I go to in my mind is the meadow that leads to a cave, right? For me, that is an inner place. And I meditate from there.
Hmm.
So now as I've gone along, it's like, was that male figure, maybe that was, like other people haven't encountered, like their spirit guide, and I just didn't understand what I was going through. I was dealing with a lot of trauma, so there was a lot of stuff happening in my life, to include an assault. So there was a lot of baggage.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of things to distract me from these big kind of synchronicities that would be, kind of like, pay attention.
Yeah.
So once, then I had almost like a year of near death, because after my son was born, I was very sick and I was in the hospital. My lungs had filled with fluid, and it took a really long time for me to heal. My business partner didn't understand and ended our business. She's, she'll have her own opinion, but I think a lot of it was she just couldn't understand what it was like for me to go through this healing process. And I was sick and I was alone. My husband, so that ended. I was recovering and having a lot of quiet time, you know, watch and sleep. And that started meditating and working on that inner stuff, because suddenly I had the time. My business had ended, where everything that I thought in the trajectory of my life suddenly was like, no, no, it's a big change. And I wouldn't say it was a bad thing. I'm glad for where I am now, but it was that big catalyst. And then I turned 40, and you know the moon's talking to me, and I'm like, you know what, I'm going to listen now. I'm ready to listen now. I'm at a stage where I can, you know um and so it's been fascinating, and I'm like, I'm thrilled every little thread that comes in, that syncs up with what's going on. It's exciting, but it's exciting in a way that is reassuring,
Uh,
because I think we all want proof that there's something there. to feel comfort.
Yeah.
And wherever it comes from, even if it's a deer print in the mud next to where you've parked your car, if you're dealing with, if your spirit animal is a deer, then it's as simple as a little affirmation that the spirits are with you, whoever you think they are.
Yeah.
So that's how I kind of choose to look at the world right now. So yeah,
Ju-
colors and intention.
Colors and intention.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I was kind of curious where you might going through all that, where you might um I don't know. I guess that's kind of hard to say where you might be at or what you believe. It seems like you're um the world's opened up to you, I guess you could say, and you're
I'm
oh,
feeling a little bit like I'm a swamp witch, honestly. Not in the sense that
in a good
so
way.
yeah, nightly I have this practice now. It's simple stuff.
Yeah.
But every morning at dawn, I put out seed for the birds and peanuts for my blue jays and my crows.
Yeah.
And I just say, I'm leaving an offering for the spirits of the land and the others and the ancestors. And I do the same thing in the evening. And I've got these two opossums that come up every night, and I've got these raccoons, and I've acquired two wildcats that now know they can come eat. And there's something knowing that I'm taking care of these little animals, and I'm sure there are people who are like, stop feeding the wildlife, but
No, I'm
um
right with you. We had a raccoon that was coming to our house, and he would come eat out of my hand, and I don't.
yeah,
He's gone now. I don't know where he went, but
well, there's something magical about that.
yeah, yep.
I've gotten to know, like, there's one of the opossums has a scar on his back, so I named him Boo Bar. I don't know why. That's the name that popped in my head, and like, that's what you want to be called.
Trust your gut.
you
Yeah.
know yeah. But so the other night, magically, we were having that storm coming, right? And I put out food and everybody came and ate. And so this was Friday night into Saturday. And I fell asleep. I don't sleep a lot, and I'm a night owl. So I'm up at these dark wee hours all the
Yep.
time.
Same here.
And so I fell asleep where I fall asleep in the living room if I'm up in the middle of the night to not bother my son and my husband. Is just a few feet from the door where I leave the offerings. Everything was good when I went to sleep, and I woke up the next morning and there was blood right on the threshold of the door. And of course I was panicking because I was like, one of my animals is hurt, right? But I also um kind of had a little bit of a sense that it was like something being left back, but not in a bad way. So I had a blank tarot card and I stuck my card in it, and um, added I had trimmed my hair that night, just because I give myself my own haircuts, because who has time for that? So I added a
Same
little
here.
hair to it, put it on the altar, let it dry, taped it down, and now I made a talisman with hopefully some of the blood of the animals I care for. And the next night I didn't see anybody, and I was panicking. And then last night everybody showed up, and they showed up together. Like, the
Oh.
raccoon was there with the everybody showed up at the same time. And I told my husband, I was like, I went to sleep last night so happy because I knew everybody was okay.
It's like a
You
Disney
know,
movie.
and it's just me quiet at night, just
Mhm.
happy to see those little guys. But it's something I say every day, and that act is me taking care of the land in some small way that I can.
Mhm.
And that's kind of what they say with that kind of work. If we're working with, I guess, in the witchy world, that's what we want to do, is we want to be back in communion with the earth and the spirits that are around that we ignore all the time.
Yeah.
So you know,
Yeah,
I just try and pay attention to them.
that's cool. That's really cool. I'm the same way. I'm right with you. I love the raccoon that would come up. I saw it. I don't know if it's the same one because it made me really sad because he disappeared for months. And then, but one came up 2 nights ago, and I opened the door and gave him a little granola bar or whatever, and he ran off. So, but yeah, I do have this. It was actually, I think, this coffee mug. I was laying out on the porch to go to sleep one night, and I woke up and his raccoon was running off with it. So, but
Okay.
yeah, I love it too. We have the possum, raccoons, all that stuff here. So, yeah, and
The,
it
you
is
know,
it is magical, like you said. You can have those encounters where it's just, um, it's 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 very earthly, like you're talking about with like the tarot, and I guess kind of like, uh, from what I can understand about witchcraft, seems kind of to revolve around like herbalism and earthly things like Mother Earth, kind of more feminine feel and everything. But
right,
it also
right.
has those encounters with nature. Is that you have some that are just very, very heavenly and very spiritually. Like I was out walking once in there's this park I go to, and I just look up and there's a deer probably like 20 feet from me, just standing there, and it didn't even run away. I just walked by, and it was just like, well, that was weird. There's something to that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. It you feel something.
yeah,
I don't remember if I want I because I'm no good here with things, but I feel like I remember there was a Gospel of Thomas or something. And I remember that was one thing that really stuck with me because it was something like, turn a leaf and I'm there, and under every rock you'll find me, that kind of sentiment. And
yeah,
it was very much a feeling like the earth is the church. And um that was one of those things that was like, that makes sense to me.
mhm,
Some of these other things don't make sense to me, but that felt like there was a truth to it. So, you
yeah.
know, um, one of my
I
favorite
like that
places.
verse. I haven't heard that, but yeah,
Yeah, I don't know if I think it's one of those lost books or something like
yeah,
that.
yeah. There's
I'll
a
see if I can. I think it was the Gospel of Thomas. I think. Now I
okay.
want to Google it. I'm going to Google it. If I disappear, that's where I went.
Okay, yeah, your picture's up there. There's a verse in Job I really love too. I love the book of Job because I feel like it touches on it. Go at the end, it goes through the different animals, but there's a verse in chapter 12. It says, "But now ask the beasts, and they will teach you, and the birds of the air, and they will tell you, or speak to the earth, and it will teach you, and the fish of the sea will explain to you. Who among all these does not know that the hand of the Lord has done this, in whose hand the life of every living thing and the breath of all mankind?" I don't know.
Yes, yeah.
I like
And
verses
this
like that.
says, yeah, the Gospel of Thomas, it says it's a Coptic Greek thing. The kingdom of God is already present for those who understand the secret message of Jesus. Um, and it says I think it's a Gnostic second century thing. So if that's something, you might look up that one and see if any of that is interesting. But I vaguely remember something like that, and
Yeah.
whatever it was, that was what I kind of um, that gave me comfort for a while. That maybe I wasn't so nuts
It's so
feeling
nuts.
connected to things. So
Yeah.
but if anything, there's peace in trying to find, I guess, truth somewhere.
Hmm.
Or that's how I'm looking at it,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
finding comfort in knowledge, I guess.
Mm. Truth that, yeah, truth that's being nestled in love or something. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Um,
in like in the world religions, you've got this idea of reincarnation too. And if this place is like a school and we have to come back and learn these lessons, if we have to learn how to love and we have to learn how to be selfless or whatever it is, um you know I don't like school. I want to be done.
yeah, I never did either. Yeah. So do
So
you believe in, do you believe in reincarnation? Is that kind of where you're?
I have this, I feel like we do have past lives. I have had dreams of um I feel like I've been a witch 3 times, honestly. I had a dream where I was on a platform, and there were 3 platforms, and each one was burning, and um my hair had been chopped off, and I was like a burlap robe. And I guess when I was young, that dream felt like, when I was in turmoil, like, oh, I must be getting closer to hell. But later on, it felt, I've tried to meditate on it, and I think I've been persecuted before. I feel like I've probably been in this kind of earthy kind of line. And if we want to say that, I think maybe this time it's safe to be mm,
Yeah,
like
probably
this.
safer.
Maybe, maybe not anymore, but so I feel like there's timelines, because I dream, and I'll dream of like being in being in a very large building and just going from room to room to room. And sometimes there's different versions happening. Um, so where those used to just be dreams that just happened and I didn't pay attention to them, now I pay attention to that stuff. And and I just chalk it up. If I don't understand it, I write it down, and oh, if it pops up later, cool. And if
Yeah.
not, I won't dwell on it forever.
Yeah.
But there are just some things that kind of scratch at the back of your head. They're like, I think there's something here. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
I'll write it down, and I'll just observe and keep going.
Yeah. That's very smart. Dreams are very. I say that a lot. I say dreams are very real. Way more. I used to be the same way. I never thought anything of them until the past few years, and then I just started paying attention to them, and I'm like, wow, they're extremely important, extremely impactful, and they, even in the Bible and the scriptures, that's how God speaks to people most of the time. It's through dreams, and you wouldn't even have the whole story of Joseph with his coat if it wasn't for his dreams that he had. So it's like
Right.
yeah, they mean a lot, or they can mean a lot, like you said. Some of them might not be so much, but yeah.
Right. Well, and and to believers in the others and the other side, when you're dreaming, we're going to those realms.
What does that mean exactly? When I
The
haven't heard
others.
that phrase before. Yeah, the others. Yeah, I'm interested. You
So
piqued my interest.
the others is that's kind of how you want to refer. You don't always want to refer to them as the Fae.
Okay.
Um, and you never want to say thank you. Don't say thank you for
Well, is
anything.
there a reason why don't you do
It
either of those?
If you say thank you, it's kind of like, think about going to a place where it's appropriate to belch, right? To show your appreciation of a good meal. In that kind of sense, saying thank you is like not. You don't say thank you for things. It's not done. It's like against the rules of propriety. It's
Oh,
insulting. So
is there a reason, or is that just known and they're not really
I
sure of the reason?
since I'm not, so I'm sure somebody's going to be screaming that I'm wrong. But the sense is that it's kind of like, they know what they're doing. You
Okay.
you don't you don't
So you're
need
kind of
to,
undermining them a little
or,
bit.
or like saying thank you is almost like you didn't need to, right? Because
Mm,
they have a different sense of I guess right and wrong and things like that.
that's really
So
interesting.
again, that's why I say, like, think of it like a different culture. It's just don't do it. That's They say
Y-
don't do it.
Yeah. So why
Because
they
there's
don't
those tales that they're dangerous, right? Um, that they're dangerous, that
Yeah.
If you make them mad, that, that's at your own risk kind of thing.
Mhm.
But that's why when I say, here, come, there, I have offerings for you.
Mhm.
Be known that they're here for you, you know.
So there's a and when you say offerings, is that specifically referring to the ones you put out for the animals as well? Like there's a connection between that and
Yeah.
the others, or
So you think those raccoons and those opossums that come from the wild, that come to eat, they eat that food, but the energy can be transferred to the others in that way, right? um it's the same kind of way, I guess, like in the sense, the transmutation of the Eucharist, right? You're imbibing that wafer, but there's so much more to it, really,
yeah,
right?
yeah, that's
um
a great parallel there. Yeah,
yeah, yeah, so that's
interesting.
kind of like, so, even before our call, 7 and then the time changed, now 8 o'clock is dusk for me.
Mhm.
And I wanted to make sure I had my offerings out before the sun set, because some of the opossums come early to get food, especially if they know I've put out cookies, right? But I put out little vanilla cookies for them, but also because they like it, but also the fairies are supposed to like it, right? So I'm putting out my sugar and my things for them to make them happy, but I'm also doing it for the animals. So I get like this double pleasure, right? I get to watch the opossum with his little stubby hands just really enjoying those cookies. But then I also get to think, well, I hope you're enjoying it too, right? Like, I hope you're getting what pleasure or whatever it is that we exchange in that way.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. Huh.
yeah.
Is there so? But you also mentioned that. Did you say they don't like to be called Fae? The Fae? Is that what you
So,
said?
well, I think that it's because you've got to think, right? If we look at the overall, if we look at them as a nature spirit or a nature entity, right?
Hmm.
And we go, okay, in the British Isles, they are called the fairies, and they appear in this way. But over maybe in the Middle East, we're talking about the jinn. Um, so it almost, like, some I've heard say it's almost like a derogatory term, right?
Okay.
Where we're just calling, we're addressing one small subset, but I think in reality we're probably a big set of different things. And if we look at the different historical texts, we'll probably figure out which spirits are what, right? Because I think there's some. I was listening to a podcast, Kryptonauts or something, and they were talking about a little goblin spirit in South Africa who appears green, and he's got really long arms, but he's a goblin looking thing. And he had a name, Duende or something like that, which kind of sounds, if you look at the Irish names for the others, like, I'm not going to say it because it's horrible, but it's I'm not going to pronounce it right. But
Okay.
the word sounded like the word that I've heard in terms of a name over here, and I was like,
That's
it's just so it's so neat. And but they're talking about like this little green goblin um, figure that
yeah.
appears in South Africa, but it sounds like a classic little green goblin that you think of, like, Rumpelstiltskin or whatever. So it's like, all right. So I just
What I
prefer
do with that?
the others because I don't know their true name. And
Hmm.
or the she, the
Yeah.
Irish call them the she. So
Okay.
so
I think I just recently heard that. I hadn't heard that before, the she, but yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I
Huh.
just use the others to just respectfully acknowledge what I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot we don't know, that's for sure.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's kind of, it seems to similar from what I gather is that there's a lot of similarities, and even with Jinn and what I guess you would normally say fairies, or they would, you kind of don't want to encounter them or something. It's like you said, it's dangerous in a way, or it can be dangerous. And,
Right. Well, and then, but there's a lot of twisting of folklore too to make them dangerous, so that you stayed away
yeah.
from the
Okay.
unknown, right? So there's a lot of that idea of the negative side of you know, maybe the development of Christianity and the modernization of civilization, is that it said, don't look to the land, right?
Hmm.
Don't look to these spirits that you used to listen to, because they're bad. And, the history of your ancestors and the cultures that you came from, they're all wrong, because now it's supposed to fit into this, you know, smaller, concentrated view of reality. And
Yeah.
so that's, things can be turned bad. So you know what do we know? I don't know.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I've just
Just
heard that
be respectful.
I guess what I mean is it's like you mentioned earlier, that if we're talking about nature spirits and actual, like, a different spiritual realm, their concept of morality, like you said, is a little different than ours. So we're kind of walking into an unknown in a way, and so it's a little bit, it can be, I guess, dangerous in that way, because they are, I think, normally mischievous and stuff like that. But um,
Right. What
yeah.
is mischievous, right? To
Mhm.
us versus them.
Yeah, yeah.
There may not be any malice behind it, and there might be,
Mhm.
because I don't want to say there's no danger,
Yeah.
but if
Yeah.
anything, though, I have felt a release from some of the doom and some of the fear of the devil.
Mhm.
I don't see it everywhere, like where it was easy to, when it's, I guess, when we were younger and you're just like, well, the Bible says, right?
Yeah.
So, and I think in that sense too, finding that maybe what our purpose here doesn't have to be so scary is a relief too.
Mhm.
I don't know.
Yeah.
There's enough horrible stuff happening that I don't need to be afraid of my rest, right? If
Mhm.
that's what we're doing, we rest or whatever.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't want it to be all so horrible.
Yeah. Yeah. I
There's
know. Yeah, I
enough
know what you mean.
horrible. So,
Yeah. Yeah, and I think even in scripture, I think there's different, um I mean, it seems to be focused mostly around, I know Christianity is really very polarized, like angels, demons, one or the other. But I think in scripture, I've heard, I'm not like, I don't know the Hebrew, but I heard there's different uh names for different spirits and stuff. And they're not all bad either. Like, even the ones that look bad, or seem bad to us, like, could just come as warnings. It might not be, like,
right.
you could
Well,
have
I mean,
a terrifying dream, and it could be like a blessing from God, because you'd wake up and do something different that would cause you to save
right.
your life.
Well,
Yeah.
and the angels are terrifying. I mean,
Yeah.
they really are. So,
Yeah, that
I wouldn't be so comfortable if there was a big angel standing there all of a sudden.
I know.
I'd be like, what I do? What I do? You know, um,
Yeah. I know.
you're obviously here for something. But
Hmm.
I was, that was, there is an interesting parallel between the tree of life in the Kabbalah and the world tree in Norse religion.
Yeah.
They have almost very similar points. And so once again, that's just another one of those things where
Yeah.
it's like, that came from somewhere,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And to have almost corresponding shapes, I think the difference is there's maybe 9 spots versus 12 or whatever it is. Um, but it, it's just more of those little correlations along the way,
Yeah. Yeah.
little signposts like, oh, okay, maybe those things make sense and those things are going to travel through Um, so just keep looking for the little flags, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of parallels across different cultures and religions and everything. It's very interesting, very intriguing, and they're all popping up. I guess now because of the internet and everything too, information's just flooded and everything's, and so you can,
Yeah, but the fun way synchronicities work is you'll start talking about this, and then tomorrow, like everything that pops up will be things that like she talked about that yesterday,
yeah,
right?
it gets, yeah, it gets
So,
weird. It gets concerning a little bit sometimes too. Well, not concerning is not the right word, but yeah, especially with shapes. You even mentioned shapes, and just recently I started thinking about different shapes, and this maybe could lead in another question I was wanting to ask you because I was actually um, thinking about the Trinity a while back, and it was one of those things where I was like, I don't want to think about the Trinity. Like that Christian doctrine has confused me so much, but then it started to actually make sense to me when I started seeing it in shapes and as a pattern of just like a unity of multiplicity. Basically it's unifying two things together, and then I was like, but then I started seeing the two triangles on the Star of David, like one going up, one going down, like the heaven and earth, and it's just like all these patterns, and I'm just like, oh no, here we go again, synchronicities.
no, but that's what it is. I think
Yeah,
that's what it is. It's like, the universe has to figure out a way to communicate with us somehow.
yeah,
And I
yeah.
think that's how it is, but you think about the Trinity, but you think about the three the your triple goddess comes up
That's
all
what I
the
was going to
time.
ask you about too, the because you said you have been encountering threes a lot recently, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, so for me, I have encountered three shrouded female female spirits that refer to me as sister. Um, a friend of mine who is a witch who's more Greek, she was like, "Oh, it's the fates," you know. That's
Okay.
obviously who it is, right? And but I've never
But
really identified as much with kind of like the Greek
yeah,
pantheon.
can you tell me what the
Um,
fates are really quick? I
or think about the priestess of Delphi and everything.
Okay. Is it
Um,
Persephone and like the or am I getting that wrong?
oh, I'm probably gonna kill somebody with being
I'm
so
gonna
wrong. But so the idea is, right, there are you had the oracles, and they are your they are
okay.
they're linked up with Hecate. Um
Okay, yeah.
and
I
she is your goddess of witchcraft on the Greek side.
okay. Okay.
For me, I haven't paid so much attention to them because the Scandinavian stuff has come out for me more.
Okay.
And there is actual magical practices within the Scandinavian traditions attached to what are called the Norns, Norns, and they are their three shrouded women that are basically the creators of fate, right?
Okay.
Um,
Fate. Okay.
and the concept is you can't escape fate. Even the gods are um, subject to them and their power, right? At the end of the day, they're the ones that are creating the cloth of time,
Okay.
essentially, right? So that's kind of who I'm talking to, or who talks at me.
Okay.
Um, when I meditate, if I get things, it's come from them. So I've been working that way. So I've followed more of that Norse kind of pantheon just because that's the way it's been taking me.
Uh-huh.
Um, so I've just been trying to listen. I just try and listen, and there's a couple different scholars who are archaeologists, but also happen to be into they call the pagan side of the Norse stuff heathenry.
Okay.
So I've been listening to some people in that way and just trying to learn. And there have been a couple lectures by another woman who I can't remember her name off the top of my head right now. But she is talking about the Norse pantheon and spinning and the power of that. And there seems to be kind of like an obscure spinning goddess out there. So
Like a divine
that
weaver or something, or spinner, divine spinner, I
exactly,
guess. Yeah.
spinner to weaver, right? But you
Yeah,
got
yeah.
to spin the yarn first. I'm always going to harp on that. You can't weave with nothing.
Yeah, with that spinning first.
So
That's really interesting. That's that would make sense to me totally, because it's like the I don't know, the language like just gets away. I don't know what you call it, the divine like spirit of spinning or something, and then that's what you're kind of partaking in, engaging in, I guess. I don't know. Is that
yeah, I mean, you
okay?
are creating something from, you know, essentially nothing, right? And that's kind of what was her face? I said Rumpelstiltskin before, right? And what that was what she was supposed to do was she was spinning that straw into gold, right? That was the power he was giving her. She was spinning straw, something inanimate, into something worth something, right?
Yeah,
And back in the day, being able to create cloth and to do those things were vital to survival, right?
yeah,
Um and then when we hit periods of time where you weren't allowed to practice divination or something, people would turn to the spinning ladies that also sometimes were the herbalists and the healers, and you have to disguise your magic. And so people would disguise magic in mundane tasks, right?
uh-huh.
But then if we go, let's disguise our magic now in new and fun ways, right? So circle back to moon water. If you're a painter, you go make your moon water and you paint watercolors of religious things that mean importance to you, and then your painting is imbued, with extra energy and intention, and you remember what you've put into it.
Yeah, yeah,
And then there's the concept then, right? You're creating an egregore of some kind because you have been feeding energy into it, because you know what you've created, and then you pass that on down the line. And that piece of art now has power inherent to it that maybe didn't exist before. So, you know, um, it's just really fascinating, all the layers that you can add into the things that you do as a crafter, and how you can put that intention in your craft and create it magically too.
yeah, yeah. So going back to the three shrouded women, can you tell a distinction between the three, or they kind of all come to you as one, or do they speak
It
to you
seems to be
separately?
a group. I feel like one is really bitchy. One is one is just like she's nicer, and then the third one is kind of in between. But there's one sometimes that I'll feel like the answers are really kind of like flippant and snippy, and I'll be like, I'm sorry, I didn't do anything, and there's been some really interesting people talking about kind of, you know carefully talking about what it is, the difference, that kind of knowing that something's talking to you versus, like, is this mental illness, right?
Yeah,
Am I crazy?
yeah,
And you do have to, there is a little bit of that in the beginning, but if you're self-aware and,
uh,
hopefully you can maybe tell the difference.
yeah, yeah. With yourself, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah, I
Right?
definitely know.
The simple act of questioning what am I experiencing is sane, right?
Yeah,
Maybe,
hmm,
I don't know.
yeah. You have to kind of like engage in a slight bit of madness or something to open the door, I think.
Yeah, you
I
have
don't know
to
if
be
madness is
really,
the right word, but it's lunatic,
yeah,
right?
the
Lunatic.
unknown,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
unknown.
Yeah. Which can be scary for a lot of people, but then yeah, that makes sense.
Hmm.
Wow, that's fascinating. So is the because you mentioned the other one, you said in uh Wicca, or I guess is that is it Hecate or something? And that's
She's the Greek goddess of
oh, that is
witchcraft.
okay. Oh, okay. Is that the one? As I heard somewhere, it's like the maiden, the mother, and the crone or something. Is that the
So
three?
that's kind of, so that's your triple goddess concept.
Yeah,
Um, but it's
that's.
also your three phases of womanhood,
Mhm. Is that kind
right?
of is that is there a similarity with that with what you've
Yeah,
been
yeah.
experiencing?
There's
Okay,
definitely a correlation with that.
okay,
But for me, I like um that maiden mother crone kind of concept for me. Like I feel like I'm moving from the mother into the crone. Um, and so I don't know if that is a part of, um, kind of part of this journey that I'm taking, that I'm transitioning. A lot of people have said they have, experiences a little younger, right? Maybe in their youth phase, but maybe my life was too chaotic for me, like I said, to really notice all those little signs earlier.
yeah,
Um, so
yeah,
coming into this older, mature woman phase, maybe it's like that wisdom is coming with it, or maybe they'll, I don't know.
yeah. I'm sure. Well, you seem like you're even with your openness and stuff. Yeah, I mean, you have to be open and be creative in any way, but then you're still you seem like you have the wisdom with you to be able to, um, like you said, look internally and chew on these things. And if you get a dream, you take it inside and kind of meditate on it and see if it's something else. Yeah, instead of in all the little voices or madness, it's like, well, I should probably think on that a little
Right.
bit too. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, well,
yeah.
it's like you just observe.
Hmm.
Is the voice the same voice, or is it constantly changing, right? Like does it start to have a personality, or
Oh, yeah,
so,
yeah.
but um something that has been fascinating too, um, that I've heard from Aidan Walkner. We're people who, I don't have a visual like not a visual memory. Like I don't have a mental image.
Mhm.
Um, I think they call it aphantasia. So if I close my eyes and you're like, imagine an apple, you might see an apple, and have I know what an apple looks like, but I don't see an apple, right? It's
Yeah.
black.
Huh.
Um, so meditation and having these experiences are a little different, because when I am experiencing things, I don't have a mind's eye. So they're like knowing impressions. Like they're impressions that I know are real. Just like I know an apple exists, and I can kind of have an outline shape of it, and I know an apple is red and it has a green leaf and these things. I know these attributes, but I can't close my eyes and see it. And the flip
Mm.
side of it is interesting, is my husband has no internal dialogue, right? Like he
Oh,
has
that's
a visual
interesting.
memory. And my son is growing up with a speech delay. And I'm like, you have got both. You've got a brain from mom and dad. I have no idea what's happening in your brain, right? But he took a little longer with speech. And I was like, I wonder if he's like his dad and he doesn't have an internal dialogue, right?
Oh,
I don't know any of these things, but I just like, it's an observed hunch. Is this
yeah,
what's going on in my little precious guy who's doing great, right? But it took him a little bit longer to get to those words.
yeah,
And now knowing that about dad, it's like, so it's symptomatic, right? And it's the same thing with kind of what we're doing here, right? It's just looking for, is this hypothesis right? Scientific method, yes, no, oh, well then we'll scrap that. We'll
Yeah.
scrap that data and we'll keep going. So
Yeah.
like look at the dreams, write things down. If they keep popping up, I think they mean something, you know.
Yeah.
If they don't reappear, scrap it, move on. So
Yeah. Yeah. That's fascinating. Huh. I forgot totally. I had a question there and then it just left me all of a sudden. Oh, that was it. Do you ever, since you said you can't normally visualize things very well, do you ever have those rare occasions where you get an image and then
yeah,
it's like more impactful? Yeah, that's okay. That's happened to me as well, where I've mentioned that to people and I thought it was just a common thing. I was, because especially with people's faces, I've had that happen where like I cannot for the life of me, like even now, if I tried to close my eyes and picture my mom's face, who I saw earlier, like, it'd probably be hard for me to get at least
yeah,
get every detail. But I have had instances where it's just all of a sudden I can imagine it and every detail's there, and I'm just like, okay, this is strange. Like
yeah. Apparently, there's a scale, and you can look it up, and it like the people have a range from being incredibly vivid to nothing. And
huh,
so I think they say most people kind of fall somewhere in the middle range, but
yeah,
it
hmm,
was interesting being an artist and going through art school, having, you know, nothing there. So,
yeah,
but, but you can still create.
yeah.
Where does it come from? Right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And there is even I've noticed for sure, growing. Like I said, I think before I even hit record, when I started coming back to more to Christianity and more following God and stuff, it's probably been maybe 6 years now pushing that. But I started notice I've become, I think, more attuned to like know when I have a thought and when a thought's kind of like, I don't know how to describe it other than it's out here and it
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and so you can kind of discern those things a little better, and when a thought's even in here, when it's up here, when it's out there, like you said, even going off your gut or your intuition or your heart or something, and
Right.
um,
Right. Well, and we trust prophets, right? And where are they getting it from? Right. So
yeah, we should be able to trust prophets. I don't know about that
right, right.
though.
Well, you know what I mean. Like we
Yeah, yeah,
so many things have been founded on those ideas, but um, if
yeah,
somebody was like, "No, I'm sorry, Jesus, you're just crazy," right?
yeah, yeah,
Or "I'm sorry, Muhammad, you're bonkers." But they were also receiving information that sounded similar.
yeah, yeah. It seems like we usually the prophets we don't trust are the ones that are right, and then and the ones we like try, the ones we trust are the ones that are just telling us we want something we want to hear or something like
Right,
that.
and those are
Yeah,
the ones we have to look out for because
yeah,
we know people are evil and we know people want to take advantage of power,
yeah,
So it's a strange slippery slope, and the only thing I can say is you have to trust your gut, and if it doesn't feel right, it's not
yeah,
right,
yeah.
you know?
Well, I don't know.
And
I mean,
God gave you that gut and that intuition for a reason if you want.
yeah, yeah, for sure. I don't know if you. I mean, I don't want to like take up all your time or anything, but I did have some other questions, but they might be more rabbit trails. I don't know if you do. You
Oh,
have
it's
to
okay.
go
We're
or
we're good for a few more. Yeah, my son is they ate dinner and they're downstairs in
and
video
the
game world and
oh okay,
tablet.
and the critters are fed. So I had the
Yeah,
questions about
yeah.
the colors though. Like, what do you have any insight on that? Like, what different color? Because you mentioned that they'll mean different things to other people, but I was curious to if you might go through a few of them and what they mean to
Well,
you,
there
or
there so like there's your stereotypical, associations with colors like people have used like look at candle magic, right? Green for money and white for purity and blah blah
oh,
blah blah blah.
okay,
Um, but each of us has our own relationship with color, right? So green for you might mean money, but green for me might be my jade, right? And this is good luck for me.
Okay, what?
Or
Why is
green
that?
might, hmm, jade.
Sorry. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, well,
I'm
it's
not familiar with that actually. Like that.
jade is a Chinese symbol of good luck and
Okay.
prosperity, you know,
Is
and
that
this is like is it's something like a protection kind of thing.
okay?
So like when children are born, they're given jade, things
Okay.
like that.
Yeah.
Um, but well, let's see. So, but green might also mean um, um, renewal
Mhm,
and growth,
mhm.
right?
That's what I would think of personally. Yeah.
Right. So your colors are going to be defined by you. There are going to be some things that culturally tend to be similar. Like a lot of people find blue relaxing, right? You could also associate your colors with the chakras. If you know and feel comfortable with the chakra system, you know, so like you could say purple is mind's eye, you know, purple is blue. So you'll use purpley blue colors for psychic intention, right? Um, so, but again, it's defined by what it means to you. Blue might be, you know, the night sky for you, but blue might be the color of the shirt of somebody that you hate, you know, so you don't
Mhm.
want to use blue. Blue might be the Virgin Mary for you, right? So what does blue mean, and what that energy means is going to come from inside you, right? Because if it's Mary to you, then you're going to evoke inside yourself those feelings that she brings forth in you. Versus, you know, if you're just thinking about the ocean, right? What does the ocean feel like? It's not the same. It's not that same energy, but it is a distinct different energy, right? So it's how you choose to identify blue within yourself. What does it associate with? And then how does that how does that give you power, right? Or power for your work,
Huh.
you know?
Okay.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
if you choose that color blue that means married to you, and you paint a painting, you know, and it's a soft blue, you know, enveloping something else like a white light. Let's just think color, right?
Mhm.
What does that mean to you? What does
Yeah.
that glowing white light surrounded by that soft primary blue of hers, right? What would that mean to you?
Okay.
Change that blue, right? Think of that blue as the ocean engulfing that white light. Does that feel different? Does that feel more scary? That doesn't feel as peaceful. That feels more deep, and there's a fathom to it, right? Like a darkness to it. So it's how those colors evoke those feelings in you. And
Yeah.
then the less understandable side of it is, again, you put that work and that intention into what you're crafting,
Yeah.
and then over time that energy that you continue to feed into what you've created becomes a thing, you know. So if you
Ah.
put loving energy into it, and that's what you feed into it every time you look at it, and then later on you pass that on to a loved one, when they look at that, they'll feel that love that you've poured into it,
Mhm. Yeah.
right?
Okay. Okay. I can see that. Yeah. I guess I was just curious because if I didn't know if there was like universal ones as well, or if we have like personal ones, and then there's also if it works with layers on top of universal one. I guess the reason I was asking because
Look at like the candle magic basic stuff, right? That'll give you like this basic: red means this, yellow
okay,
means that.
I did
But
okay,
for me, I don't like looking at things that tell me what it's
yeah,
supposed to mean. Yellow doesn't mean happiness for me. Yellow is a color I can't stand in bright yellow sunlight.
huh,
I prefer the moonlight. You know what I mean? So
yeah, I
Um,
never heard yellow meant happiness. Let's see, moon I thought was associated with silver, which I thought was
right?
associated with like to me that feels more warm and um trying to think of the right word. I thought it was also associated with like inner thought, like intuition, things like that. And that's all kind of
Mhm.
silver going through it. And gold was more clear, like the sun, direct
Right.
sunlight, like very conscious
Solar
thought.
energy.
Yeah.
Right.
So I
But
didn't know
some
like
people really thrive on that solar energy,
uh
and some people don't, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So,
Yeah. Okay, I
right?
see what you're saying. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, because I would be more inclined for the moonlight. Like I like you, I'm
Yeah.
up more at night and stuff. Yeah. So I like I've always liked silver better than gold, even when I was little. So, but then
Yeah.
I just didn't know. Yeah. So I see what you're saying. Like where we're more inclined to go to one to the other, and one's like gold for me is not really, or yellow or whatever. I don't even know if they're sy- synonymous or whatever. But if they're, I wouldn't think happiness like when I think of that either. But
Right.
yeah.
Right. So
Okay.
I grew
Hmm.
up in, well, I was born in Houston, Texas, right? And every time we go back to Houston to visit, it's nothing but heat and just unpleasant
Yeah.
sweating. It just, and so for me, yellow is that intense, combustion of the sun.
Yeah. I see what you're
That
saying.
is a powerful energy.
Yeah.
Combustion is not peaceful, you know. So, but other people are like, "But the sun on my face is
Ah,
warm
I see what
and
you're
I
saying.
love it, and vitamin D, and it just makes my cells happy." And I'm like, "Good for you." It gives
Yeah.
me a headache, and it makes me hot, and I'd rather dance under the moon. But
Yeah.
you do you. So,
The green was very interesting too, because you mentioned like, because I feel like, I guess what I was trying to get at is I feel like there's kind of maybe an underlying like universal thought where like it comes up as grass, so it's kind of associated with prosperity or something. But then to one person that
well,
could mean
like
life, and
some
another person
people,
that could mean covetousness or something. Or
well, for American, green can be money, right?
yeah, 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 exactly. Yeah.
Our money is green,
Mhm.
but that isn't universal like in other countries, right? Money's
Yeah.
pink in some countries, money's blue and yellow.
Yeah.
So, um, green might represent wealth and prosperity to an American,
Uh-huh.
where it won't to a different culture, which is why I brought up red, right? Red in
Yeah.
Chinese culture is good luck and
Okay.
prosperity.
Yeah.
Green, jade and green is also good luck, but it's red doesn't necessarily mean good luck in Western culture, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure what it means. To me it means I've always associated with like the earth and the clay. And I think some of
Mhm.
that was from when I went out west with my younger sister and just seeing. I mean, it's just the red rock out there, and it's clear you got the red clay, the blue sky, like earth and heaven, and then the
Yeah,
green is the life that springs from the earth for me. I think that's why I have those associations. But
yeah. And well, and
um,
for me, green is life. Green
mhm,
is life.
yeah,
I keep planted fish tanks, and I just let my plants grow, and
that's
I just love them being wild. I don't aquascape, but
cool.
there's there's something peaceful about that verdant, bright green, right?
Yeah,
And so for me, that's life, that's energy.
yeah,
And that water is living water that I have access to, that I can use for whatever I want, because I have that living water, right?
yeah,
So, if you want, I could say my fish keeping is magical too. So,
yeah,
um, you
yeah.
know,
It is.
it's all the layers, right? This
Mhm.
they don't stop.
Yeah, that's really
And
cool.
it's just however wide, I guess, you want to look at the scope of incorporating the things in your life, right? You can live a magical life. You can live a life devoted to God, and what you do is you try and be mindful, right? And just as staying mindful of those things are what is supposed to be bringing you in contact with it, right?
Yeah.
So if I can turn every activity I do in some way, shape, or form into something that helps me stay mindful and true to what I'm finding internally, I guess that's my end goal, you know?
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that. Uh, um, have you? This was one question I wanted to ask you because I remember you said on the other podcast that I think you said you've had encounters with well, when you said it, you said Fey folk, but was that more, was that a visual thing or was that like
So
just
I
kind of
think that was
knowing
definitely the
emotion?
that dream state thing.
Okay.
I think that male figure
Oh
that
yeah.
was full of love and compassion. I feel like that, whether or not that was a Fey counterpart or
Okay.
a spirit guide or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but
Yeah.
I'm inclined to think that their realm is probably lays right on top of ours.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Yeah.
and when we die, maybe that's where we go. We
Yeah.
just can't see it, right?
Yeah.
You know, gravity exists, but we can't see it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, who am I to say, you know, um,
Yeah.
that it doesn't exist? But finding like I said, the memory of finding the meadow. It was a round golden
Mhm.
meadow, and I couldn't find it again. And the interesting thing is we had lived in a place where we had trails, and I lived on these trails. I mean, we were kids. That's where we went. We went and we explored the woods, and we knew the trails, and we knew where to go. And I just couldn't find that place again. And it was um a meadow that, like, I kept going, okay, I know I walked over a hill and I found a clearing. And so I would walk up the hills and look every time I thought I found it, and I would go find it, and I could never find it again. And it was a memory, and then I never thought about it until years later.
Yeah.
And then I was like, that's one of those things they say. You find places and you can't find your way back to them. Or there's a sense of lost time, or you don't know how you got there, and you don't know how you got back, but you know you were there.
Yeah.
Um, and that started me going, what was that? Why
Yeah.
couldn't I find that place again? So then I started incorporating the concept of, when I'm meditating, I start by going to that field.
And it's
And then from that field, I will journey to, like, this internal kind of cave place that I have found, that feels like a memory.
that's really cool.
And um, and when I've been in that place, that's when I've experienced strange kind of like expansion. And I felt like the cave was sitting inside like a swirling nebula, like in space. And I remember a voice going, "You can find us here."
That meadow
Right.
just
And
got huge.
that's one of those things. You're like, it's a small place, but it was a huge place, but you felt it at the same time. And it was a sudden one of these vision, like, it was a clear impression of, like, that swirling nebula. And so for me, with no visual memory, right, or no visual thing going on, to have that kind of, like, it was almost like a slam, right? This is what you're seeing right this moment.
Yeah.
And then it was gone, but you can
Wow.
find us here. So
Yeah.
that's, I guess, what I meditate towards. I trying to, however, connect, um and see what comes through again. But
That sounds like a fun place to go. I want to go there.
it was pretty interesting. The
Yeah.
meditation that this one lady, it was a 4-part class, and um she is a good leader. Her voice, whatever it is she can do, she can help facilitate that journey. And it was a powerful technique to learn, because now I utilize whatever I learned with her every time I meditate. So
That's really
I
cool.
recommend it. Yeah, yeah.
This is fun. I could pick your brain for a long time, I'm sure. I can let you go though. I just have one more question, if you don't mind
Yeah.
answering. I just like to ask people this question. Do you have a favorite Disney movie? Do you like
A
Disney
favorite
movies?
which movie?
Disney movie? Do you like Disney?
Hmm. I have a love-hate with Disney.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like most people do.
Yeah. So I'll answer with this. When I was little, I used to love Peter Pan.
That's a good one.
And now when I watch Peter Pan, it's appalling. So
Have
um
you seen Hook?
yes, Hook was one of my favorites. I saw your Bangarang and I was like, we can talk.
Yeah.
I
Do you
saw
still like Hook?
Of course. Hook
Okay,
is
good, good, good.
Hook. But I really enjoyed Moana. That one has been really, really my
Yeah.
son, when he was little, he was just born, and I watched that a couple times. And the thing with the goddess at the end and all of that, I was like, yeah, I like this movie. This one's a
Yeah.
good one.
That is good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I like a
yeah,
lot of them, but yeah, they're fun. That's cool. Cool.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'm the cartoon Peter Pan. I'm kind of the same way. I'm not really sure about, but the book, I love the book. I read that actually at the beginning of this year, and the movie Hook. That's one of my favorite movies. It's yeah.
Yeah,
That,
yeah.
yep. So
I grew up watching Hook. Hook was
oh, good.
definitely in our repertoire.
Yeah,
So, you
yeah. What
know.
are some other ones? You got any other ones you grew up watching?
Well, my
Or
brother and I, we loved Beetlejuice. My dad hated
okay,
it, but we watched Beetlejuice all the time. And then because of the Chinese background, we watched a lot of Jean-Claude Van Damme. So like,
okay.
what was it? Gosh, the one with the Kumite, Bloodsport. My brother loved that, and then of course, because it was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle era.
Nice.
My brother was definitely into that, so we watched a lot of turtles.
Oh,
So
that's
I had
fun.
a green Honda Element, and I called it my turtle van.
Nice. That's cool. Cool.
Yeah, yeah, it was a
Well, I
good
can.
time.
Yeah. Well, I can let you go. It was good. Let you get back to your family. It was great talking to you and getting to know
It
you.
was really nice to meet you. Thanks
If you
for
ever want to
reaching
do
out.
this again too, I mean, I'd love to have more conversations. If
Yeah,
you,
whenever you feel like picking my brain, just let me know. Like I'm free in the evenings and stuff
okay.
like that. So,
Yeah.
yeah, and I
Same.
have a Zoom, so because I have a knitting community and stuff that I do Zooms for them all weekend. So during the week is better for
Okay.
me.
Do
Yeah.
you think? I mean, you've talked to Mana before. Do you think she would appreciate if I shared like the podcast link and if I do
Sure.
anything with
Yeah.
this?
She's
Okay.
really cool.
Okay.
She's
All right.
fascinating.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. And
Uh,
she and Celeste Mott are doing some really kind of interesting journeys too.
okay.
And Celeste has been looking more back at Christianity too. So and
Okay.
exploring some of that. And she's got a good philosophy background, and
It's
she's a witch too.
yeah.
So
Oh,
it's
that's cool. I
yeah,
told my sister, I was like, I was trying to find like I wanted to find someone who like a witch to talk to, but then a lot of the stuff I would even on podcasts I come across just was very I don't want to be too mean, but it seemed very superficial and not I don't know. It just it was there wasn't it didn't seem like anything was there. And then I don't know. Yeah, that's interesting. I would be
there
really
seems
interested to
to be
talk to
two
Celeste.
sides. Yeah, there seems to be two sides. It feels like there's your superficial, like we're just talking about, you know, I want to earn more money. I want this, I want that,
Mhm.
right? And just
Yeah.
dealing with the needs. And then there are people who are really going through a spiritual journey. And
Yeah.
and that's what you have to wade through all of that,
Yeah.
who's actually doing what.
Okay.
But I would check check Celeste out. She's got some
Yeah,
fascinating
that would
stuff
be.
she's been journeying through.
Yeah, I'll definitely have to. I think that'd be fun to talk to her at some point too. Because I just that Bible story. I don't know. There's just it keeps speaking, and especially that Genesis part. The Genesis is just. I feel like more people are getting back into it, and then when you realize it's also poetry, and it's I don't even know the right words for it. It just you it's so real. It's like happens to everyone. All the garden story, it's with the serpent and the apple, and you're like, wow, this is. And it's not even just in Christianity. Like it's in a lot of other cultures. They have the same story.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's fascinating. But yeah,
it is. I
but
love this stuff. It's fun. So
yeah.
I'm always happy to chat.
Okay. Do you care if I mean, I can send this to you before I share it, or do you want me to share it, or?
You can share it and you
Okay.
can whatever. No big deal. I'm open.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah.
Well,
And
that.
I got all hot and all pink. That's what happens when we start talking magic. You channel the energy. So
Nice. Nice. Cool. Well, it was great
well, it was
talking to you.
really nice meeting you. Yeah, it
Yeah,
was
nice.
nice talking to you.
You have a good night.
You too. Bye.
See ya.